So on the iReady packet, I'm going to go over problems 7 through 12. Each one of these are going to look like problem 7 through 12. They're just going to have different numbers. So we're going to start with number 7. Here is an example of number 7. All the numbers have just been changed, but the process is still going to be the same. We're going to apply our properties of negative exponents to rewrite this to where it only has positive exponents. So the only one I'm worried about is this 10 because it's raised to the negative 6th power. Normally my first step would be to rewrite this as a fraction, but this problem is already written as a fraction. That means I just simply have to flip this part right here. This part is the part that has a negative exponent. I need to take this and flip it down into the bottom and change the sign of that exponent. This 4 to the 8th power is going to stay in the top, in the numerator. So I'm going to rewrite this 4 to the 8th power divided by, I'm going to take this base 10, I'm going to put it in the bottom, and I'm going to change the exponent because it's like me flipping it. It was a negative 6, I'm going to change it to a positive 6. And it's going to be multiplied to this 5 to the 7th power. This 5 to the 7th power stays right where it's at because it has a positive exponent. I don't need to move that. Everything has a positive exponent, so that's what my answer is going to look like for number 7. Remember, these numbers have changed. It's the same kind of problem as number 7, just the numbers are different. So let's look at one like number 8. Number 8 looks like this one. Instead of having one base that has a negative exponent, I have two bases that have negative exponents. This 10 is raised to the negative 5th power. This 8 is raised to the negative 8th power. These are the two that need to be flipped. I don't have to do my first step, which is to change this into a fraction, because it's already a fraction. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 10 to the negative 5th power and I'm going to move it into the bottom. And I'm going to change the sign of only the exponent. I'm going to flip this one. I'm going to flip it up to the top and I'm going to change the sign of the exponent on this one. This one, this 3, which has a positive exponent of 4, stays right where it's at. So let's rewrite this. 3 to the 4th power, that one right there, stays in the top. This 8 to the negative 8, I'm going to move it into the top. So times 8, the act of moving it changes that exponent from a negative to a positive. This 10 gets moved into the bottom, and since I moved it, that negative exponent becomes a positive exponent. Let's try the next one, number 9. Number 9 looks like this one, except the numbers are different. I go down my list, none of these are written as fractions. And my first step is to change these that have negative exponents into fractions. Like the elementary teachers where I work at say, we're going to put pants on each one of those. We're going to divide each one of these by 1. Put a 1 under it. I'm even going to do it for this one right here. Because in a minute I'm going to have to multiply all these fractions together, because some of these numbers, the 5, the 10, and the 8, stay in the top. Some of them need to be moved into the bottom. This one, no negative exponent, it's going to stay the same. 5 to the 4th over 1. This one, since it has a negative exponent, I'm going to flip this. 1, put the 1 in the top, 10, now that I flipped it, to the positive 6th power. Times, I'm going to flip this one, put a 1 in the top, 8 to the 7th power in the bottom. And now I'm simply going to multiply all these fractions together. Multiply all the top numbers, multiply all the bottom numbers, multiply all the top, and I'll get my new top. 1 times 1 is 1, times this is still 5 to the 4th power. That should be in the top. 1 times 10 to the 6th is 10 to the 6th times 8 to the 7th. all those numbers or all those bases have a positive exponent, that should be my answer. Let's look at one like number 10. Number 10 is already written as a fraction. Since it's already written as a fraction, I need to look and see what has a negative exponent. Some of these bases are going to stay where they are. My bases are 2, -5, 7, and 12. Some of those numbers are going to stay where they are, and some of them are going to move. The ones that need to be moved are the ones that have negative exponents, like this -5. It needs to be moved. This 12 has a negative exponent. It needs to be moved. This 2 doesn't need to be moved. It has a positive exponent. 7 has a positive exponent. So 2 to the 4th power is going to stay right where it's at. 2 to the 4th power. 7 to the 5th power, going to stay right where it's at. This -5 though has a negative exponent, so it needs to move moved in the bottom. And this 12, which has a -3 exponent, it needs to be moved in the top. So these are the ones that are going to get flipped. I'm going to take my -5, put it in the bottom, and change the sign of the exponent. And since I'm multiplying, I'm going to put my multiplication symbol right there. The 12 is going to go on the top, and I'm going to change the sign of that exponent. And I'm going to put my multiplication symbol right there. All my numbers have positive exponents. So I need to look for an answer that has all positive exponents that are like this one down here. Remember, this is just an example. The process is going to be the same. The only thing I did was change the numbers. Number 11. Instead of having 2 bases that have a negative exponent, I've got 3 bases that have a negative exponent. This one right here needs to be moved because that's a -3. This 2 needs to be moved because it's a -4, and this 7 needs to be moved because it has an exponent of -8. We also need to remember that anything raised to the 0 power is 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a division bar, and I'm going to start moving these things to where they need to go. -12 to the -3rd power, it needs to be moved into the bottom. So write -12 to the -3rd power. In the top, when it moves to the bottom, it becomes a +3. This 2 needs to be moved into the top, and the exponent needs to be changed from a -4 to a +4. So I've done that one, I've done that one. -9 to the 0 power, that's 1. I don't have to write a 1. Unless there's nothing else to write, I don't have to write a 1. So don't have to worry about that one. This one needs to be moved into the top. So times 7, because it was in the bottom, I'm going to move it to the top, change the sign of the exponent to the 8th power. So I need to look for something that looks like this right here. And the very last one, number 12. Number 12, I'm going to have to determine what is going to be in the top and what's going to be in the bottom. I'm going to start off with this fraction right here that has a negative exponent. My rule is I need to flip that fraction and change the sign of that exponent. So let's do that. 5/2, and once I flip it, to the 4th power. This one is not a fraction, so I need to change it into a fraction. And now flip it. Put my multiplication, the 1 goes in the top, the -12 to the now +5th power. This one isn't or doesn't have a negative exponent. It's just a negative number. I only flip things that have negative exponents. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to still rewrite this as a fraction because I need to determine what needs to stay in the top and what needs to stay in the bottom. So in the top up here, 5 to the 4th power. I want to apply this exponent to each one of these numbers. Over 2 to the 4th power times 1 over -12 to the 5th power times -3 to the 3rd power. This way I can see what bases need to be in the top and what bases need to be in the bottom. All these right here, except this one, needs to be written in the top up there. 5 to the 4th power times negative 3 to the 3rd power. Because I want to make one fraction. I want to multiply everything in the top. I want to multiply everything in the bottom. I don't need this 1 right here. 2 to the 4th power times negative 12 to the 5th power. Again, all these are just examples. They have different numbers. You look down there at the bottom and try to figure out which one of those actually goes with your answers.